Jim, you were talking about Joe Bonamassa and some recent sales. Yeah,
Yep.
sales. And I think one of them was 59 Les Paul that he sold.
Yep.
Which he buys and sells stuff like that all the time.
Yep.
So people think that he only acquires 59s. Now he sells them quite a bit, actually. That some people have referred to him as the dealer. If you want one, that's where you go.
Curator.
Yeah, he likes to have them, but he also realizes like there's a finite amount, and he'd rather put them in musicians' hands sometimes. He loaned one to Josh Smith. He said, "Here, take my 59 on the road." Yeah. Josh is like, "I ain't doing that. You're nuts." And then he thought about it. He said, "No, actually, that's a good idea. I'm going to do it." Yeah. But like he sells stuff all the time. So here's the story, and you probably already heard this. I'm sure another podcast has reported on this by the time this comes out. He sold an NFT of one of his. Is it a new song? I think it was a new one, right?
Yeah, it's a new song. Nobody's heard yet. It's a demo or something. Yeah.
How much to go for? Do you know?
I don't know. We're talking a lot of money.
Tens of thousands of dollars, probably. Yeah, potentially more. And Joe and I, like, I've made jokes about Joe on the show a lot, and we called him Boner Ass at one point. I have a tremendous respect for Joe. Like, I'm going to be real. Like, I think Joe is like a museum. In that when you go see him, the whole thing is like you're going to stand in the audience and you're going to see what rock and roll looked like, in the 70s. Like, it's the full-on experience with the crazy guitars that are you just don't see anymore, and that whole shebang, right? And I think he has done more for the guitar community in the last 10 years probably than anyone else. In terms of just elevating people that he knows that are great players that deserve a limelight, and producing other people's records, and being responsible for a lot of the what people think is the quintessential modern blues sound, and that kind of thing. But the NFT thing like really kind of pisses me off. And I want to share this with our listeners so that they understand, because I know that there's already been some stuff said on other podcasts that is just like, where the hell do you think what do you think an NFT actually is? NFT, I'll tell you what NFT is. And this is going to be like a David's rant section, but like an NFT is bullshit. It's what it is. When you buy an NFT, you need to understand something. It doesn't matter whether it's a song. It doesn't matter whether it's art. What you're actually buying is a blockchain. Okay, so it's a segment of a blockchain that says this is attached to this particular piece, and you own the first copy of it. And this is the verification that you own the first copy of it. That's what an NFT actually is. Okay, so here's why this is dumb. Because NFTs are always attached to digital stuff. And so like, they'll send you, oh, you have an NFT, and then here's the GIF of this famous emoji, right? Like, you bought the emoji NFT. You do realize that in the digital world, copies actually exist, i.e., it doesn't really matter whether you have the quote-unquote original, because you don't. Number one, you can't. That is, unless you have the physical hard drive that it was created on, you don't have the original copy. And even then, that's a sketchy proposition unto itself, because files can be moved around the system, and it doesn't necessarily just remove it from a partition table and then reattach it to this other place on the partition table. So if a file gets copied, pasted, moved, it's no longer an original, right? Except that it is, because it's the exact same thing. You literally clone something. There's no consciousness attached to it. It doesn't have any individuality to it. It's not like, okay, so we're gonna work our way through different examples. All right, so in the painting world, if you were to buy a Van Gogh painting, and everybody knows what Van Gogh paintings look like, right? Let's say you buy Starry Night. You buy a copy of Starry Night, okay? It's a copy because not every single brushstroke was replicated completely accurately. Not like the original, where you could use computer telemetry to look at the original and find out each individual brush stroke that was applied to the canvas. And that is part of the individuality of that painting. It's not like that. You can literally take that in the real world. It would be like having two of literally the same painting. Van Gogh literally painted the same painting twice in every, down to the molecule, the atomic structure of it, because that's ultimately what this is. So the NFT, the blockchain part of this NFT idea is basically saying that, well, you have exclusivity over being the sole owner of the original incarnation of this. It is not publishing rights. Okay. It is not, you don't own anything, really. You own the blockchain piece. You don't own anything because everybody owns it, right? Like, as soon as you give birth to this digital thing and it gets distributed, anybody who bought it owns it because they own the original. It's the same as the original. There's no distinguishing them apart. If you can't distinguish them, you can't own it, right?
Right.
It can't be like you can't own some exclusive thing. So I'm going to compare this to a couple of things that would make more sense for music other than like painted art, right? So like comparing NFTs to records. People collect records. Do you know why people collect records? It didn't start as records have better fidelity than other things. That's not how it started. People started to collect records because they were exclusive. So if you got a first printing vinyl, it would be different than the 5th printing vinyl or the 20th printing vinyl because it was all created off the same master, but there are variations in the vinyl itself. And over time, they make copies of the master to produce more vinyl records. So as you go up higher in number, guess what? You don't have a first pressing anymore. And if you
Right.
and over time, you do enough pressings and the quality degrades. That's why vinyl record collecting started off with the idea of getting things like, you know, old blues records, first printing, you know, on a Tuesday kind of stuff, because it was really about getting that fidelity. Then people got to the point where, just like with comic books, they're CGC grading them, and they're like, you can never listen to that first print of that first pressing, and that's stupid. Okay, because then what are you collecting, right? I got this record I can't listen to. Really?
The same with books.
But
remember
that's
first printing of books.
But that's what happens with anything that goes through a collecting thing. Like, it goes through this first phase that's like, grab them all up because of a reason, and then all of a sudden it becomes grab them all up because there's value attached to these, so we can't do anything to them. And then later on, it might go back the other way. It just depends. So like now I think we're back to the point where we listen to those records. But
I just thought about that. I used to do that with novels. So I would buy a copy and comic books, big time in comic books. I would buy one to have, buy one to read. I still do that. Well, not anymore really, but my Funko Pops. I have ones that are sitting out like this. And
some of them are in the box.
I have the ones that are in the box. This doesn't even have to stay in the cellophane.
I've got it in the. Sorry.
He's got the box. Everybody who watches JHS channel knows what that means. But yeah, so I've got Rush and Steven Tyler, and those are all coming out of the box. But no, Rush isn't. But I've got a Willie Nelson because I know Willie Nelson. That one's going to go up this world the minute he's not around for long.
Yeah.
And as soon as he passes, that Willie Nelson one's going to go right up through the roof. I was actually surprised how much Kirk Hammett went for recently. I was like, really? Kirk Hammett? But anyway, I don't care. I took it out of the box.
Well, he's a Gibson artist now.
It's got glue on its feet. Those are all glued down, by the way. It's that tacky glue you put on the feet to put it down, but it's still glue. But anyway, that's out of the point. Point is, I have boxes of cereal that have never been opened. I have a container of Oreos that have never been opened.
Enough. We don't need to know any more about your crazy science experiments.
No, but that goes back to that EFT, that blockchain. It goes.
You have the original cereal that no one ate.
That's right. I have the original box of Trix with Wonder Woman or whatever part. There was like a whole bunch of the General Mills where they put the Justice League on the back. And you know what? I actually have I'm missing one, and I think one of the kids ate the cereal out of it. I'm so mad. And I cannot find a replacement for it. Not for any amount of money.
Yeah. So The reason why NFTs like comparing NFTs to records, the reason why records are different is because there's obviously a difference in fidelity as you go back, right? So having the original or having the master, could you imagine? And that does happen.
Yeah.
Is truly a thing that you could pay tens of thousands of dollars for. Whereas having an NFT, everyone has the exact same copy you do. They have the exact same thing.
I'm going to give you a dumb example. So I was over at my friend's house. I like having CDs. I'm still old-fashioned that way. This is a CD set of Alabama, 25 years,
right.
Great hits, if you're an Alabama fan. All right. This, what brand new, went for like $19.
Oh, yeah, they're pricey now.
$50 online is an inexpensive one. And I got this, and I took the cellophane right off of it, obviously. But I found this for $20. I'm like, well, that's what it's supposed to be. But most people are selling it anywhere between $50. An inexpensive one is $50. The guy sent me a thing because he saw that I looked. Somehow eBay told him I looked at it. And there was some for $100. And I was like, $100 for this? You can buy this in MP3 form for $20 still. Yeah, you don't get the booklet. I could care less about the booklet. But I'm just saying,
for a collector, that's
right.
But you can't collect NFTs. You're not collecting anything. It's not a tangible thing that you bought. Okay? It is literally a thing that says you bought the first one, even though the first one doesn't exist. Because they're all the first one.
That's exactly what we're trying to say. It would be like if you bought a digital Les Paul.
So, we're going to move on.
And you can't leave it to your kids.
We're actually going to talk about NFTs. We're going to compare NFTs to guitars. That's the last step of this. So, NFTs to pedals. Let's talk about pedals for a minute. So, people act like, well, it's a circuit, right, whatever. We all know that, at least in vintage pedals, we don't know what it's going to look like today, but we do know that with vintage pedals, you can take two fuzz faces, put them next to each other, and there's component drift and component selection that made them different. Right. We know that. We know that's true of pretty much every vintage effect. Even things like triangle muffs and stuff that aren't really thought of as vintage as much. Things that were made in the 70s and 80s. Where, like, two TS-808s, you put them next to each other. One's going to have a little bit more high end than the other one. Or one's going to have a little bit more bass roll off. And it just has to do with component drift. And it has to do with circuit variation. When they buy stuff in large quantities, if they don't test every component they put into a pedal, they might be different. And it even applies to boutique builders, because even boutique builders, as much as they really strive for trying to get the circuit values correct going in their circuit, they know they have wiggle room in certain places. Because the effect has to sound like this, but they're not all going to be identical, and they sort of know that. And there are certain ones that thrive on it. Zvex is a classic example. He makes the Fuzz Factory, and he makes the Super Hard-On, and that the Super Hard-On boost, he says they all sound different. Like, it's just a very simple circuit with this very specific transistor, but depending on the transistor to transistor, they're all different. And he's sort of okay with that. And a lot of people are okay with that. It's a very popular pedal. Same thing with the Fuzz Factory. Depending on components and stuff that are used, they're different. So that's not an NFT comparison you can make, because if you bought the NFT, your copy that is supposed to be the quote-unquote first one, which, as I've already explained, isn't even the thing. That can't actually be a thing. Because even if it was the first one, the copy you got the second they emailed it to you, or however the hell they got it to you, unless they handed you the drive unmolested in any way, and you never plug it in, you don't have the first one. You don't. And in fact, you can even make the argument that it was lost in memory of the computer. Like, so this whole tangible, intangible idea that we can make things tangible by using the blockchain is just, no, that's not how this works. I work for a legal administration or legal association, and we are a member of the the legal blockchain consortium. And so I have enough knowledge about blockchains to make these statements. I'm not an idiot on it. I've actually worked with some of these individuals and had some very extensive conversations asking some very interesting questions about immutable ledgers. And I can tell you that all it is a ledger. It's your name attached to a number that is randomly associated with this long slew of other solutions to an equation that does not end. Okay,
that's right. That is almost impossible to what do you call it? Break.
NFTs to pedals, NFTs to amps, same thing. NFTs to amps. I would argue, and some people would go into the ship argument that I think we had in a previous episode, where is it the same ship if you take the parts off that ship and build it somewhere else, or the whole conundrum, right? Is it the same ship if you replace parts? And people would argue like amplifiers are basically the same scenario, even things down to the vacuum tubes that are in the amp when you first get it. Some people are like, never swap them because then it's not the original amp you bought. And that's why you have these collectors that are looking for all original amps, including the original tubes. That's the holy grail for finding a deluxe reverb, is the one that still has the original power amp tubes in it even, which is nuts. You'd never want to do that for various reasons. Chances are there's no life left in those tubes. Same thing with speakers and that kind of thing. So it's really no different for amplifiers. The reason why they have value is because of their individual properties. Individual properties. What do you get when you copy a piece of software or digital data to another medium? No individual properties, except for maybe a date modified stamp that's actually not on the file, it's attached to the file, hence the term metadata. So when we talk about guitars, that's where everybody knows guitars are all different. Two of the same model right off the line this year are going to be different. And it has to do with the wood. It has to do with the, how consistent the hardware that was used to produce those guitars, that like the bridge, for example, how consistent the metal was. It has infinite variables that make each guitar individual. Now, granted, those aren't the things that we actually use to apply value to a guitar. We still use rarity because for the most part, nobody's buying a guitar going, man, that one plays better than every other guitar I've ever played, and so I'm going to give you $6,000 for it because it's worth $6,000 and not $2,000. That's not how that works, right? Because our prices are largely driven by collectors, and that's basically what it boils down to. But the point is, NFT of a guitar? No, because they're individual on their own. You don't need an NFT. You want to buy number 1 Strat? David Gilmour has it. I mean, so that's a thing. I understand that. That's a historical item. But once you start talking about intangible things and selling something, we're not even talking about intellectual property, because we're not talking about publishing rights. We're not talking about songwriters' credit. We're not talking about even owning the intellectual, just the intellectual property, meaning Michael Jackson bought the Beatles catalog by buying the publishing company, right? We're not talking about that kind of thing. You don't own anything if you buy an NFT. You own a number that is attached to other numbers that is a solution to an equation that basically says this file belongs to you, or you own the original file. You don't even have to have it. You can delete it. At that point, it doesn't matter because the copy is out there. No one's ever going to know. They're not delivering you a hard drive that you can never plug in, because the second you do, you're going to erase the data that you have attached to the blockchain. That is right. This is the most ludicrous shit I have ever seen. And these creative people that are dipping their toe in this minefield, because eventually it's going to end up in criminal court. Somebody like me is going to be like, what the hell here? And these assets are going to be devalued. That's what's going to happen. This is a fraud, is what it is.
That's right.
It is a sham. And it is snake oil in every possible way. And it's not legal. It shouldn't be continuing this way. And I'm really, really frustrated when I see somebody like Joe Bonamassa saying like, well, let's see if we can make a couple bucks this way. I sort of get it, but I'm like also on the persuasion of like, dude, for real, like everybody on the other end has to know this is BS.
All right. Well, all right. I'm gonna go with the devil's advocate thing here. And that is this. I don't know is Joe Bonamassa is a very smart guy. Knows how to make money.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's his own promoter. I mean, who could say that?
He's doing it for a long time. That's right. He's his own promoter. He's got one-man management team. I mean, the guy is he's literally a marketing genius because he is a lifestyle brand.
Yes.
He really is.
Joe Bonamassa could go start his own label at Gibson or Fender or whoever, and people would buy the shit out of it. I mean,
that's correct. So,
Joe, if you do that, cut me in. Joe, if you do that, cut me in, please.
Yeah,
I'm sick and tired of coming up with these ideas for companies like Gibson Records and not being credited for it. I'm just sick of it. Somebody pay me. Somebody pay me.
I'll give the obligatory $1 to buy in. The fact is that what I think is that, and he's right. Regardless of what you and I see as value in this thing, there is some ding dong out there who thinks there's value in it.
Yeah, there obviously are. He's not the first. There's been many people selling NFTs. Right.
What was the big one? It was a GIF of a cat or a
JPEG. The one that was like
JPEG,
$1 billion or something, and it was fraudulent. They didn't own it. They didn't have the rights to sell the NFT, which made it even worse.
Right. And it's been resold. Or, no, it wasn't resold. But anyway, it because it's something you can't resell.
Yeah, everybody
already
owns
it on to your kids. It is literally something you have until you pass away, you literally can take it with you because it's nothing.
It's intangible.
Right. Which is what you will be.
I mean, intangible. I'm not going to pretend that I have a problem with intellectual property. That makes sense to me because intellectual property is usually like artistic renderings and it's like the look and feel of something, or it's a patent, or it's, a trademark design. Like those are all things that are protected, but they're not just data. Like it's literally the idea behind the data that you're acquiring. Whereas in this case, it's literally freaking data. When you sell a creative NFT, you're selling bullshit. That's what you're selling. I mean, that's what I don't know how to break this down any other way. And Joe, like he's doing what a lot of people are doing right now, which is like, well, that we can make money on this. So people actually think this is a thing. And I don't even know if Joe necessarily understands what an NFT is.
I think he has a good idea.
He probably does.
People have probably explained to him. Remember, he's a blues guy. He's not a computer guy.
I think he's reasonably smart, but yeah.
Right. That's what I mean. But I'm sure people have explained to him that it is like Bitcoin in that it is a blockchain and it has a value, and that value is the value that people assign to it.
Yeah. I mean,
put it up for a certain amount of money and somebody will buy it.
That's basically what it is. I mean, he's kind of doing a Pete Rose, right? So Pete Rose was signing stuff outside, he had a shop where you could come in and he would sign stuff for you. And like, it sort of makes sense to do something like that. And this is the same thing, but it's done digitally, basically. I have attached myself to something that Joe Bonamassa has done. And I just think if you're going to sell NFTs to the rights, or so now you're on the immutable blockchain as owning the rights to X. And I don't care, maybe rights to perform X, or, with impunity. And that kind of thing would be really cool because it would actually have a tangible value associated to it. You would be the only person able to perform that song other than Joe Bonamassa.
Well, that's not what you're getting.
No, that's not what you're getting.
That's right. What you're getting is the first digital copy of a song. You can't take it, put it into run it into whatever, and then sell that song. You cannot use it in a movie. You cannot put it as your opening to your podcast. You can't do anything that can be attached to making money from owning that thing.
You don't own the publishing rights.
You have literally donated money to Joe Bonamassa. That's what you did. You donated money to a rich guy. So, congratulations. I saw a podcast. I won't say who it was because I don't think he kind of really meant it in the thing that I felt when I heard it. But I was watching a podcast and it goes, if you don't want to buy, stuff, you can make donations. And I'm thinking to myself, donations to you? So if you'd like to donate to us, just reach out to one of us and we'll gladly take your money.
Hey, you know what?
Non-tax write-offable.
I will NFT every episode of this podcast going forward and sell them to our listeners.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that.
My guitars for you.
I'll make this very clear. I'm not going to do that.
Not doing that. Exactly.
First off, there's no value in our material, but second off,
I have to laugh at the fact that exists. The ability to donate to someone who that's like somebody donating money to Jeff Bezos
for his dick rocket.
Yeah, for his wiener rocket.
Yeah.
Let's face it, there were enough Dr. Evil jokes to last a lifetime from that one launch.
Yeah.